You are about to see a video that I finished yesterday. And between yesterday and today, I am wholly convinced that I'm about to offer you proof that the people in the house at 34 Fairview are responsible for the death of police officer John O'Keefe. Now, keep something important in mind. Thanks to Mark Betterow and co.'s mega motion, we know that these folks are so much more afraid of us than they are anything else. Because they know that we and our dogged persistence will never let this go, not until the truth is exposed. And we now have definitive proof. For the first time in this story, I am now able to picture Jennifer McCabe being hauled out of her home in handcuffs. And my hope is by the end of these videos, you are able to do the same. And hopefully together, with our collective knowledge and skill set, we can put pressure enough on the feds to once and for all see that justice for John O'Keefe comes to pass.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Beningo, in case you thought you were in the wrong place. And I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor. And today we are returning once again to Canton, Massachusetts to seek justice for police officer John O'Keefe. Now, if you missed it, last night, attorney Melanie Little was kind enough to grace us with her presence.
I'm watching so many cases in front of Krupp right now, so now I'm conflating them all in my head. But they're going back on December 5th. And so December 5th is the day they're going to argue the mega motion. And I think December 5th also, I was talking to Betterow today, and I'm not sure if there is pending a motion to recuse on that case or not, but they said they were going to make one. And also they're moving to have it dismissed. So
Right.
Maybe Krupp will dismiss it and then Marcy doesn't have to. And then all the McCabe's and Alberts can't go after Marcy. They can just be mad at the judge. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know.
It could be like a parachute, like a way out of it.
Will it be Krupp? Is it going to be officially Krupp that hears it on the 5th?
It was supposed to be Doolin, and I think Krupp is on the calendar now. It's so weird the way they do it there, because in New York, once you file an RJI, your case gets assigned to a judge, and that's your judge for your whole case. That's your judge through trial. In Massachusetts, they do this weird thing where they rotate them in and out every couple of months, which is so weird because the judge doesn't know the case. And then you're going to argue a motion in front of a judge that knows nothing about your case. And even the appellate judges there admit they don't read the papers. It's so weird. It's like the Inside Out, upside down.
And Melanie is like a heroic figure in my world. So it was a monumental experience for me. And she's just so wonderful, even more wonderful than I already knew she was. But after she and I were through, our live went on. And it became clear to me that many of the folks in the chat were still unclear about whether or not John O'Keefe was left out in the snow to die. And one of the questions that came up was the confusion or the consternation over, well, how could Brian Albert and Brian Higgins and Jen McCabe, how could these people just toss John O'Keefe injured outside in the snow and in the cold to die? And for me, this was one of the most significant moments from the second trial. It was really the testimony of Dr. La Posada, the former chief medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island, who is a super pro. Just when you thought that you couldn't get better witnesses than the ARC guys.
Do you have any training or experience in diagnosing hypothermia in individuals?
Oh, yes.
Have you conducted autopsies of individuals who've suffered from or died from hypothermia?
Yes, many.
How many?
Oh, 100 or more, and then I've supervised my assistants who've also diagnosed the same death from decrease in body temperature.
Have you ever engaged in any death investigation, aside from the actual autopsies, death investigations in which the cause of death was deemed to be hypothermia?
Yes,
How many times would you say you've undertaken that type of investigation?
at least 100.
I also want to take one quick moment to thank the Trial Channel for all of their hard work and effort and for allowing us to use their footage. If you don't know about the Trial Channel, you must. They make it so much easier for us by including timestamps and editing all the garbage out, and we love them. And she made it known that John O'Keefe, number one, showed no signs, evidenced no signs of hypothermia.
Do you agree with or concur with the blunt force head injury as the cause of death?
Yes, Mr. O'Keefe died from the blunt force head injury.
Do you concur with the diagnosis of hypothermia?
No, the body did not have any hypothermia.
Now, the reason why this is very difficult to discern is because there are two reasons why a body temperature would fall to 80 degrees.
We know that normal body temperature is around 98, and we know that then at the hospital that Mr. O'Keefe's rectal temperature was around 80. So we know that his temperature went down. So there are two ways the body temperature can get down. It can get down while you're alive, or a dead body also cools when it's in a cold environment. So those are the two things you have to look at.
There was no frostbite, which is something that many of us had speculated about even before the second trial. And what it was that the medical examiner, Dr. Scorti-Bello, thought evidenced possible Winooski spots inside the stomach lining of John O'Keefe were very likely internal bruising, if you will, that was very likely the result of the machine that was used to try to resuscitate John O'Keefe. Now, this is called a Lucas machine, and this machine operated for 37 minutes from the time that the ambulance arrived to try to resuscitate John O'Keefe at the scene through to the ambulance and when the hospital took over. Now, the Lucas machine operates at 100 chest compressions per minute.
His body was found around 6 a.m, and he got to the hospital around 6:37, I think. So if they put the Lucas machine on him when they got him into the ambulance, and it's compressing at 100 times a minute, and that is from the time of the body being discovered to the time at the hospital, that's around 37 minutes. So if you multiply 37 minutes times 100 compressions a minute, that's around over 30,000 compressions that would have been done to Mr. O'Keefe's body in the course of his resuscitation efforts.
Doctor, do you have an opinion as to what caused the hemorrhaging that we saw on Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
It was from the blunt compression of the Lucas machine.
And interestingly, Dr. Scorti-Bello made no mention of the Lucas machine. She does mention in her report that there were CPR efforts to resuscitate John O'Keefe, but makes no mention of the actual machine and the damage this machine caused.
So you said that you're aware that Mr. O'Keefe was hooked up to a Lucas machine, correct?
Yes.
And are you aware of the length of time that Mr. O'Keefe was hooked up to a Lucas machine?
No, I am not.
Do you know how many compressions per minute a Lucas machine causes?
I would have to say close to 60.
Would 100 compressions per minute be a reasonable amount of compressions for a Lucas machine to cause?
Sure.
So assume 37 minutes of a person hooked up to a Lucas machine, and assume 100 compressions per minute. That would result in 3,700 compressions from a Lucas machine, correct?
Correct.
Could 3,700 compressions from a Lucas machine explain hemorrhaging in the pancreas?
Okay.
And that explanation could be why there's hemorrhaging in the pancreas as opposed to hypothermia causing hemorrhaging in the pancreas, correct?
Possible.
Did you consider that at all in your autopsy report, the effect of the Lucas machine? Is it written anywhere in your autopsy report?
I do consider changes due to cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The rib fractures that were observed were attributed to CPR. Usually we will see some amount of hemorrhage in the soft tissues, but in this context, with the gastric findings, the pancreatic findings, and the information that he was found in the snow with a body temperature of 80 degrees, my opinion was that those hemorrhages, along with the gastric hemorrhages and his body temperature, were consistent with hypothermia.
My question was, does your report state anywhere the words Lucas machine?
No.
And you agree that a Lucas machine could cause hemorrhaging to the pancreas,
It can cause hemorrhage in a lot of tissues,
but including the pancreas.
including the pancreas.
And as we then heard from Dr. La Posada, there were no signs of hypothermia.
Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
This is a photograph I took from our forensic medical literature, and it shows the lining of the stomach. So the stomach is opened up, and we look at the lining of the stomach, and it shows a characteristic pattern of small ulcerations throughout the stomach, which are called medically Wisniewski's ulcers. And that allows a forensic pathologist to diagnose death from being exposed to a cold environment or death due to hypothermia. And they're caused by, as the body gets colder and colder when it's alive, these small blood vessels in the lining of the stomach, they start to break, and then they're in the acidic environment of the stomach, and you get tiny little ulcers, which then look like small dots. And that is how at post-mortem examination or autopsy, it's one of the findings I look for to see if a person died from hypothermia.
Is that exemplar of what Wisniewski spots looks like as it relates to hypothermia from a book that is, or literature that is peer-reviewed?
Oh, yes.
Is it widely accepted in the medical field?
Yes, it is.
And it referenced by forensic pathologists and used in teaching?
Yes. So these areas are little tiny craters, and they fill up with blood. And we see that in over 90% of the cases of people who die from exposure to the cold.
Doctor, did you also look at Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
Yes, I did. This is the Mr. O'Keefe's stomach, which has been opened up, and we're looking at the inside. We see that the mucosa is a little bit red, and there's a little bit of increased blood flow here, and this is the normal pattern of the inside of the stomach. It's kind of ridged. That's called rugae. That's the normal folds inside the stomach. But there's no ulcerations here. So the diagnosis of death due to hypothermia is not appropriate in his case.
Did you see, or do you see, any classic Wisniewski spots in Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining or gastric mucosa?
No, no.
Do you observe any ulcers specific to Mr. O'Keefe's stomach lining?
No, there are no ulcers. It's a normal appearance of a of what we would call a gross specimen. When you open the stomach at autopsy, you can see some redness of the normal lining of the stomach.
Did you, let me ask this first. Do you have an opinion as to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty based on the totality of your review and examination of the autopsy and its associated file, an opinion as to whether or not Mr. O'Keefe died of hypothermia or complications related to hypothermia?
I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
He did not die of hypothermia.
Dr. Scortibello also admits that a lot of her determination came from the police and the fact that John was found in the snow.
At the grand jury, did you testify as follows? If the injuries had been sustained in a different environment where the temperature wasn't that low, then there might have been an alternative explanation for those gastric and pancreatic hemorrhages. You recall that?
Yes.
Now, you have to remember that the people inside the house at 34 Fairview were first responders, Brian Higgins and Brian Albert. Brian Higgins, in fact, goes a step further to explain that he was indeed an Army medic.
You're a former firefighter, is that right?
Yes.
Did that put you in a position of being a first responder?
Yes.
And you're currently a law enforcement officer?
Yes.
That puts you in the position of being a first responder, correct?
I'm also a tactical medic. Yes.
And Brian Albert, of course, was a Boston police officer for 30 years. So these guys are trained in how to be a first responder, right? They would be trained to handle these kinds of situations. And as a result of that, they would have known as they were sitting around trying to figure out what are we going to do with John O'Keefe. When you find somebody out in the cold as a first responder, you are not allowed to pronounce them dead until after they have been in the hospital or received life-saving measures and an attempt has been made to resuscitate, because there are these freak instances where somebody has been in really cold temperatures, let's say in very cold water or in the snow or hypothermic, who after a half hour of life-saving effort have been resuscitated. And if you talk to anyone, let's say nurses or emergency room doctors or first responders, they will all tell you the same thing. Why is this important? Well, Jennifer McCabe's Google search, though it seems obvious that the reason for that search would have been how long is it going to take if we put John's living body outside for him to die in the cold, that search is deceiving. It was not to determine how long it would take for him to die outside. It was to determine what the best time would be to put his body outside so that it will look to the first responders like he was hypothermic and not deceased. They needed to know how long would John O'Keefe have to be outside for the body to be hypothermic. And Jennifer McCabe, as she's Googling away on her Safari browser, she is looking to figure that out, right? Is this a good idea to put him outside? Is it a bad idea? So what she was trying to do was get more information to determine what the best route or best plan of action would have been for the dead body of John O'Keefe. This also explains why Brian Albert would not have been able to come outside of his house. Now, the reason why they made the determination that it was safer for Brian Albert and Nicole Albert to just, quote, sleep through everything that happened that night was because if Brian Albert, a trained first responder and someone who I'm sure prides himself on being very good at whatever he does, comes outside, he then is faced with knowing that this man is already dead. So what does he do? Does he come outside and tell the ambulance that he thinks he's already dead. So this was an impossible situation for Brian Albert, who ultimately decided the better play would be just to act oblivious. In addition to the fact that there was no signs of hypothermia in John O'Keefe's body, the other big time piece of information is that, and as Dr. LaPosada explains, the injuries to John O'Keefe's head. And this is something that even the Commonwealth's witness was pretty clear about.
When the coup contre coup process happens with the skull fracture, does anything happen to the front of the skull?
Well, you're asking me, does the rest, I mean, the forces, depending on how hard they are, can generate fracture lines all the way to the anterior fossa.
Did you see any sign of orbital fractures in Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, he had both the ME and the pictures taken, and the neuropathologist mentioned fractures of the orbital roof.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty how those fractures occurred?
From the trauma.
Could you just explain a little bit how that would happen?
Well, as he fell backwards and he struck his head, it was clearly at a very high speed generated by the gravity. The bone, depending on the quality of his bone, the density, then generated forces. There's a certain amount of lateral give, and then you get a linear force going forward. It drives all the way up the clivus and forward into the anterior fossa where his orbital roofs lay. And this is why people like this get what they call raccoon's eyes.
Do you have an opinion whether the brain itself could have caused the orbital fractures?
No. The brain is a soft substance. You could literally put your finger through the brain. We often operate on people fully awake. The brain couldn't possibly cause a fracture. The fracture was caused by the forces generated through that clivus, that middle bone in the middle of his base of the skull.
Even though he was brought on to say that it was possible John could have gotten the injury to his head from hitting grass, from cold grass, frozen ground, he also tells us that that injury would have been immediately incapacitating.
Because we know once he came back and slammed his head, he's not going to get up and move around.
So, yes, I'm going to strike the second part of that. Just answer the question specifically.
Okay, I'll try, Your Honor. Thank you.
Why were you interested in the outside area where his body was found?
Because then I could identify an object possibly there that would have caused the injury on the back of his head.
Did you see any such object in any of the photos that you reviewed?
No, there was nothing there. It was a flat grass surface.
Would the flat grass, let's assume that the grass was very cold and very hard, the dirt was very cold and very hard, would falling backward onto that dirt, hard or not, would that cause the pattern injury that you see, that we just saw in Exhibit 160?
No.
The way your brain is organized, autonomic functioning, all of the keeping you alive stuff, right? Heart rate, respiration, all of that is organized at the base of the skull. And then we sort of go in order to our frontal lobe, or the parts of the brain that are specific to high-level thinking, organization, all the stuff that makes us human, right? Forethought, the ability to reason, to complete very elaborate math problems, all of the stuff that makes us different from other mammals, that is happening at the top of the brain, right? So an injury to the brainstem essentially would have immediately caused him to be incapacitated. And according to Dr. LaPosada, John O'Keefe likely wouldn't have made it more than 20 minutes alive with that kind of injury. And because of that, we know that he was dead almost immediately. Not only would he have been incapacitated, he would have died, right? All they would have had to do is take 5 minutes to think about let's call 911 and we'll say that it was self-defense. These guys would have been cleared of any wrongdoing, but in their drunken stupidity, as drunk people generally are, they make a very poor decision. And that's why Jennifer McCabe is Googling how long to die in the cold, because they're trying to figure out some way to have John be discovered dead and not have it make it look like they were responsible.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.
Testified that. So, testified that. So,